Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marcino is in hot water. About a year ago, I exposed his situation, and 2 years ago, I blew the red flag on this guy, letting you guys know that this was a very sinister individual. However, I received a lot of kickback from the community telling me that I was a cop hater. However, many of the people who back then criticized me are now coming back to my channel and apologizing, telling me that I was right all along. Let's get into today's story. Sheriff Marcino, if you're not familiar with him, became famous after Hurricane Ian. He stood along Ron DeSantis in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, and made constant press conferences during Hurricane Ian. That was when I first blew the flag about this individual, and I warned you guys that they were using this natural disaster to garnish some type of national attention. At the time, Ron DeSantis hadn't gained the fame he came to achieve later, and it seemed like Marcino and Ron DeSantis were using this natural disaster to exploit the situation, gaining notoriety through extensive press conferences that many other sheriffs in the state of Florida like Grady Judd had done, becoming famous in the political realm by their exploits using their public offices in Florida as a base to postulate themselves using county resources and other government resources to give themselves a name on social media. These guys are clowns looking for social media clout. So about 2 years ago, I blew the whistle on these individuals and told you that they're using, well, the situation of Hurricane Ian as well as public resources. Marcino in particular likes to slap his name on the county jail, police vehicles, and well, he basically put his name on every single piece of property that Lee County owns, as if those vehicles were actually his own. He started calling the Lee County Jail the Marcino Motel, and he put his name on everything he could, from police cars to buildings, and it became clear that this individual was using public resources to gain acclaim and promote his personal political career. He got on every talk show he could and used everything he could with social media to put his name, Marcino, on everything he could. He went on parades and walked through the parades as if he was the king of Lee County, Florida, with people cheering him on, believing that his intentions, portraying himself as a humble people's person, was the person he really was. However, behind the scenes, we've discovered that the guy is an addictive gambler. $500,000 in gambling profits. Perhaps he's a really lucky man, but more realistically, the FBI believes he's doing money laundering. We'll have to wait and see what the FBI indictment actually details, because at the moment, all we have is allegations. However, all of the news sources in Southwest Florida have already in detail explained the charges that are pending against him, stemming from money laundering to diverting public resources for his own personal gain. Now, those exact words were used by me 1 year ago. Exactly a year ago, I made a YouTube video where I mentioned that the Lee County Sheriff was using public resources and diverting them for personal use. However, I was referring to the fact that he was slapping his name on everything, and it seemed like he was taking opportunities that came along with his position as a sheriff to slap his name on everything he could, gaining personal claim and clout off of his position as a sheriff. That was my claim 1 year ago. Many people unsubscribed from my channel and called me a cop hater, and that my claims were unjustified, and that this guy was a people's person, a true Florida hero cop, keeping Lee County, Florida at a 50-year low crime rate. However, as we started to see the analytics come out, we could see that the man was lying. Despite claiming that crime in Lee County, Florida was at a 50-year low, far from that. Lee County, Florida had quickly become, in a 2-year period, the most undesirable county in all of Southwest Florida, with the highest drug overdose death rates, increase in violence. Rural communities like Alva and Olga started to have homicides, and neighborhoods like North Fort Myers were spinning out of control, with dealers pushing poison openly with very little police interference. Despite the man's claim that he was doing a good job in Lee County, Florida, the Fort Myers metropolitan area was spinning out of control. I decided to move to Sarasota, Florida after Hurricane Ian. I had just had enough with the violence and the situation in Fort Myers, which has since only got worse. But I wasn't the only one who got sick of Fort Myers. It seems like the sheriff himself bought a condo in Sarasota, Florida. He discreetly waited after the public disclosure of his income and net worth. A new law in the state of Florida that all public officials must make it public how much money they got. In the case of politicians in Florida, like some in Naples, Florida, they actually walked away from their jobs because they didn't want to disclose their net worth. It seemed like many people in Florida's local offices were, well, making a lot of money on the side, and the notion of the public knowing and them having to disclose their net worth and everything that they owned and assets every single year to the public in Florida, many politicians actually walked away from their jobs fearing retaliation from the community. But good old Sheriff Marino was stuck behind. He had made his name too big and he couldn't walk away from his position. And all the people that were eating from the table with him that walked away are now left wondering what's going to happen to the kid, as the local mobsters call him. Ron DeSantis' new law flushed the toilet on a lot of politicians that were making a lot of extra money. But what does good old Sheriff Marino do? He decides to launder the money that he was making, continue his criminal exploits under the merit of, well, their gambling profits. The FBI didn't buy that, and he's now under investigation for money laundering. Now, we knew things were wrong in Lee County, Florida, when a while back the Lee County Sheriff's Office stopped letting people comment on their Facebook page. Many people thought that this had to do with the FBI investigation, but in reality, it's a little bit more sinister. The real reason that the Lee County Sheriff's Office stopped commenting on their Facebook pages was because Sheriff Marino at the time was claiming that he had Lee County under control and that no criminal would be able to operate in his county. However, individuals from Fort Myers, Florida, North Fort Myers, and in particular Pomona Park and Suncoast Estates, were going on his Facebook page and saying, hey, this is the 57th time that we've called the cops reporting a drug house, and you guys have done nothing about it. See, the truth is that while these law enforcement agencies promise to people moving to Florida that Florida is a law and order state, for the poor residents of Florida living in communities like North Fort Myers that are completely marginalized, if somebody in those communities reports a drug house or criminal activity, many times the sheriff's office simply ignores their call. A problem that has been plaguing Florida for decades now is how law enforcement simply doesn't respond to cases if they're coming out of poor neighborhoods. When these frustrated individuals in North Fort Myers started to publish on the sheriff's pages evidence that they had been reaching out to law enforcement consistently about these drug houses and that nothing was being done, it started to defame his character, which mattered to him more than the allegations with the FBI at the time. We all know what the underlying issue is when a public figure blocks commenting on videos and other social media. It lets us know that the vast majority of people are not saying supportive things. They're asking questions, making claims, and well, that is something that the Lee County Sheriff tried to hide. So public opinion started to shift away from him when, at the time, those investigations and allegations started to come out. On top of that, it seemed like he was diverting hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to news reports, nearly $600,000 a year were going to consultants who then gave him kickbacks for giving him that money. Of course, because the new laws in Florida, we have to know his assets and his net worth. He was diverting those funds to his parents, where people that were having to pay him kickbacks were having to go to his mom or his parents or somebody in the family. Allegedly, jewelers were giving him and his family tens of thousands of dollars in jewelry to the number of about 40,000. Other individuals are claiming that they were put on a county salary for doing absolutely nothing. The only thing they had to do is give him back $1,700 that was used to pay for an exotic vehicle for his father. Typical New York City mobsters. Maybe the name Marino was a clue, and it's interesting how the people of Southwest Florida were fooled by this individual. I mean, the fact that he's a New Yorker from New York with a name like Marino, with a nickname like the Kid, could have all been a clue that this individual was perhaps trying to pull some New York mobster crap in Southwest Florida, but he was able to pull the wool over everybody's head. Well, of course, not me. His days of parading down the street with people cheering may perhaps be long over. People are questioning why he has over $500,000 in gambling profits, why he has a Ferrari, why he has a condo in Sarasota we didn't know about, and why the people that are working for him are having to give lavish gifts to his parents. While all these claims are just alleged right now, we do know that he is claiming $500,000 in profits from gambling, which is a questionable thing. First of all, Fort Myers is a very conservative area, and the people that put him in local office probably don't want their sheriff to be an addictive gambler, gambling hundreds of thousands of dollars, and allegedly, some people say they've even had to cover his gambling debts at times. So while in the public eye, he puts himself in uniform all the time as a humble servant to the society, in reality, he's in Sarasota driving around in Ferraris. Whether the FBI will be able to vinculate him with money laundering and all these transactions, the idea of condos we don't know about, luxury vehicles like Ferraris, and people garnishing his family with expensive gifts like $40,000 pieces of jewelry doesn't exactly sit well with the people who gave him the power he has currently. In Lee County, Florida, a place that individuals who are retired are struggling to pay their insurance. Many people who retired down here can't afford it anymore. The notion of their top dog sheriff having condos in downtown Sarasota, driving Ferraris and getting expensive jewelry and buying expensive vehicles for his family members just doesn't sit well with a conservative area that is struggling to recover from Hurricane Ian. These lavish lifestyle decisions and the fact that they're kind of in the background happening secretly. In the public eye, he wears his uniform and portrays being a humble person. But we're starting to discover that clearly a public official salary that he receives doesn't really exactly explain Ferraris, condos, houses in Fort Myers, expensive jewelry, buying vehicles for his parents. And let's not forget that this individual is literally, allegedly, well, we've confirmed it already with the allegations that exist, gambling more than his salary every single year. It doesn't really make sense, and this isn't the type of personality that the people in Lee County, Florida want representing them. He isn't the only local official in hot water right now. The mayor of Naples, Florida, was arrested for a DUI. Her rampage drunk across the city, running into mailboxes and people, and letting everybody know that she's the mayor, she can do whatever she wants, isn't really going to sit too well with the people in Naples, Florida. But again, we've also seen other politicians simply walk away from their obligations when they were having to disclose their actual assets. Despite these local offices paying these individuals generously, they're not content with that figure and they want more. They find ways to steal from the people. In the case of the Lee County Sheriff, it seems like he was stealing to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, laundering the money, concealing where the money was going, and all that is under investigation by the FBI. And I'm sure that condo being in downtown Sarasota and not downtown Fort Myers could also be a slap in the face that despite the fact he claims that Fort Myers is a safe place, even he himself has to come over here in Sarasota to find a safer place to hide. In Manatee County, Florida, we've seen two people in local office also have run-ins with the law. One individual being accused of stealing from another with evidence, and there's even a video of him pleading guilty. Another individual was seen on a video DUIing as well. It seems like the local officials in Southwest Florida in office right now are drunks, gamblers, and of course thieves. Despite the fact that people would assume that these individuals in local office, in theory, they should be upstanding citizens, exemplary in their behavior to the community, are actually nothing more than a bunch of clout-chasing, scamming, thieving clowns, using their public offices to promote their personal political careers, obtaining notoriety and clout using public resources, visible from the outside. But when we dig deeper in, we're even finding that these individuals are involved in more serious crimes. Without a doubt, Ron DeSantis' law having public figures have to disclose their assets Could have been a tactic from the governor to distance himself from the inherent corruption of public officials in the state of Florida. We're starting to see that these individuals are living lifestyles that far surpass their alleged incomes. Most of those resources are being diverted from the community or outright laundered from individuals who are willing to somehow or another steal from public resources, including sheriff's offices. And well, it seems like local offices in Florida are doing exactly what I have been telling you guys for a while. Most of these individuals are in the pockets of developers, and for the most part, most local offices in Florida are so corrupt that these individuals are even stealing directly from the sheriff's offices. Lee County, Florida in general is keeping areas like Lehigh Acres unincorporated because it's a money grab for people in local offices. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the corruption that we're blatantly seeing out in the open. Imagine the things we don't know about. In the case of Lee County, Florida, I had also been reporting that police officers were pulling over migrants and extorting them for vehicles or for money. Many people claim that these were unfounded racial accusations that I had no basis for, but we recently saw a Lee County sheriff arrested for doing exactly that. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I predicted this police officer getting arrested for extorting migrants. I predicted that this individual, Marino, would be eventually caught up with diverting public resources for his own personal gain, the same accusation that the FBI is now examining him for, as well as the situation in Alabama. We've seen now that Latinos are being randomly killed in Alabama. It's been several times where I have made claims on my channel about things that are happening in the community. People label me as a liberal, claim that I'm lying and defaming local public officials, and might take a year, it might take 2 or 3, but eventually the truth does come out. You're seeing today on the news Marino being labeled for diverting public resources for his own personal gain, a claim that I made more than a year ago now. With all of the major news agencies in Southwest Florida reporting on the situation with Marino, it doesn't seem like he's got too many friends in the public eyes at the moment, and eventually we'll have to see what happens with the FBI indictments. Will he actually be indicted for money laundering? Will these claims that are being made against him prove to be true or false? Even if these claims are proven to be false, his defense at the time is that these are claims because, elections are coming up. And, well, of course, the claim that every crooked politician uses, they're trying to defame me because of elections. But we will soon see the reality. Are these allegations true? But even if these allegations prove to be false, there are still question marks about how he's gambling hundreds of thousands of dollars, how he's driving around in Ferraris and buying condos on a salary of merely about $200,000. I mean, that's basically like a YouTuber's salary. And it seems like with his affliction for fame and clout, perhaps instead of being a sheriff, he might want to be a blogger or YouTuber instead. And the way things are looking, he might have to do it from a prison. And while we will have to wait and see exactly if these allegations are proven true or false, one thing is clear, that his lifestyle and his spending habits aren't exactly the things that the people in Southwest Florida want to see from somebody like their sheriff. How this individual thought that over $500,000 in gambling profits wouldn't raise a red flag, but again, these individuals in Florida are so blind that even when the red flags of corruption and deceitful behavior are blatantly in the open, they seem to believe these people blindly. And unfortunately, that's why there's so much corruption in Florida, because after all, people just blindly believe these people who are at the end of the day nothing more than crooks and thieves looking for clout and admiration from the public. Little man syndrome. This is what's happening currently in the state of Florida. Again, I tell people just to wait and see exactly what happens with the FBI. Perhaps he will be able to clear those charges, but even if he does, there's still a lot of question marks about the lifestyle and the image he's portraying. Without a doubt, his name's been tainted, and the run is over for Lee County Sheriff, the wannabe Grady Judd, who turned out to be the Lee County Dud, claiming that Lee County, Florida is at the safest state, while in reality, we've seen my footage coming out of Lee County, Florida, where homelessness, addiction, and paraphernalia litters the sidewalks. A sad reality being masked by the claims that the county is becoming safer than ever, when in reality, even the sheriff himself had to flee to Sarasota for safety. We'll have to wait. I know a lot of people are just jumping on the accusations and saying they're true. You have to always give somebody the benefit of the doubt. And we'll see what the court system does with him. Maybe they'll be as lenient with him as he's been with the criminals in Fort Myers, Florida, who continue to push poison on the streets with complete immunity. Once again, the individuals who once labeled me a liberal and a liar and a cop hater are having to come back and apologize to me, saying that I was right all along. And that's the thing with people today. It doesn't matter how clear things are, how nicely you present them, they want to believe the lie. And well, many times they accuse people of being a communist or a liberal just so that they can mask the fact that they're, well, blindly believing in a lie wool overhead. Local government in Florida is definitely facing a state of corruption that is unsettling to the residents, and it seems like there's so much corruption that the next person in line is likely to move the same way. The governor's new laws having these individuals have to report their assets and income has definitely shaken up the landscape in the state of Florida, and we're starting to see that many people who claim to be heroes are nothing more than thugs.